Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Judy Laster. I'm the founder and director of the Woods Hole Film Festival. This year is the 29th edition of the Woods Hole Film Festival. Traditionally, the festival happens from the last Saturday of July through the first Saturday of August, right here in Woods Hole, where I'm located. Ordinarily, for a 9 o'clock screening, you would have people running up and down the streets, trying to not get caught behind the drawbridge because it goes up and down every half hour. We traditionally have 5 venues happening at one time, so there's a lot of energy and creative dynamism in the community for the 8 days of the festival. But this year, when COVID became a pandemic in the middle of March, we, along with many other film festivals, realized that things were going to have to change, and the likelihood of having a multi-day in-person event with thousands of people was going to be slim. At the beginning of April, we realized we were going to have to decide whether we were going to not have the festival this year or try to become virtual. At that time, virtual film festivals hadn't really begun to exist in the way that they do now. However, we're still all in a learning phase. But we, for the last 2.5 months, have worked day and night to put together this virtual festival, and we are so thrilled that we are able to present 187 films, incredible films, by filmmakers from all around the world. And one of the great things about a virtual festival is that we can bring these films to audiences from many different places, which we might not get a chance to do otherwise. Because of the popular demand for the films in this festival, we have also decided to extend it through Monday evening at midnight. So if you haven't had a chance to see all the films yet, you have 2 more days to do that. This film, like all of the films in the festival, is also eligible for an audience award. So we would hope that you will go back in and vote in the streaming platform. This festival could not happen without the support of our sponsors, our grant funders, our donors, you, the audience, and most importantly, the filmmakers. So one of the things that we do every day is have filmmaker chats in the morning at 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Streaming live to Facebook. And in the evening, we have filmmaker Q&As like this one right now. So I'm gonna welcome our filmmakers. We're gonna talk for about 20 minutes. If you have a question, please type it into the Q&A or the chat, and we'll try and get to those a little bit later. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Why don't you unmute yourselves and come into the conversation. So if you want to just give us a little bit of background about the film. It's such an amazing film. How did you come to this story? Yeah, let's start there.
Well, thank you, Judy. It's wonderful to be part of the festival. First of all, we feel really lucky to be here, and thank you so much for your support and continuing, doing what you guys do amidst the new 2020 landscape, which none of us wished was happening. But thank you. I mean, we're really happy to be here. And to answer the question succinctly is difficult. I personally was attracted to the story because I traveled in the region in the mid-90s when I was an undergrad, and it made such an impression on me at that time that I felt like I had to go back again and again and again. And to everybody there, this is our daughter who's feeling sleepy, who would normally be in bed, but for circumstances involving bee stings is still up with us tonight, but feeling much better, as you can tell.
Well, not everyone may have seen the film yet, so give us an idea.
Okay. Oh, if you haven't seen the film yet, so the film takes place in eastern Nepal and follows the story of a family traveling along a route that is becoming, that is still in the process of becoming a transnational highway that will link China to India. So it looks at what's happening in the valley in a very microcosmic way through the journey of this family who travels in order to sell medicinal herbs that they've collected throughout the year, and they make it's the basis for the village's cash economy, basically. And the route that they travel along is traditionally a walking path, and they've been doing this for generations and generations. And now there's construction crews in transforming that walking path into a road for vehicles. So there's a lot of changes happening in the region because of that, and we tell the story observationally through the eyes of the family on the road, you know, in the most authentic way that we could.
How did you connect with the family, and how did they decide that it was going to be okay to be in this documentary? I would imagine.
That's actually a good question. How did we link with the family?
So,
you can
well, I'll back up a little bit. So, the reason we kind of ended up with this subject was because when Luke was in college, he did some undergrad. Did you say all that? No.
I said enough of it,
Okay.
I think. They just want to know how we met the protagonists in the film.
So we were traveling in the area, and we were sort of looking for a story. We wanted to find characters that would help us tell the story of what was happening with the road. And we learned about this tradition of people collecting medicinal herbs and traveling, and we just thought that sounded like a fascinating subject to explore. And we met Mikma, and she was very open to us following her. And yeah, it was sort of just luck, I would say.
It was like, it's interesting, there's a little more to the story than that. So we had, when we first visited the village, we were looking for, I mean, basically the film was conceived to be about the road and how the road is creating changes to the communities in the area. And we were looking for stories, and when we learned about this migration, we thought this definitely has to be part of the story that we want to tell. And we had visited the village, and we met two women who are in the fields harvesting they harvest in groups. It's a very much of a trade-based economy. Like, you help your neighbors help you as far as the farm work goes, and household work as well. And so we met these women out in the field, and when we got back, we looked at the footage and we talked about it, and we were like, these are the two women that we should ask to see if they'll let us join them. We'd kind of joked with them when we first met them, and they said, yeah, sure, you can join us, yeah, sure, but we weren't sure how sincere they were. And so we went back a couple months later, and the village everybody in the village goes on this migration, and everybody was getting ready to go. And we,
check out.
I think we're gonna do a little bit.
Very well, yeah.
At least Kate made it
Bye.
for a little bit, yeah. But long story short, the woman that we thought we were going to be traveling with, until the night before that she was leaving, we were getting ready to film with one family in the village, and it turned out that was going to be difficult for a variety of reasons. As when you're making a film, you have a lot of considerations about, you know, who's going to look good on screen, and who's going to carry it, and who's going to feel natural, and who feels like a good fit with what you're trying to do and the relationships that we were trying to build. And it just wasn't working out. And the night before we were set to leave, we actually were working with a local from that village who was acting somewhat as a translator and somewhat as a kind of a fixer and coordinator, and was interested in filmmaking, was helping us make the film. And he went around and he asked the other family the night before they were leaving if they were okay with us joining them on their 7-day journey. The night before they were leaving, he asked them. And so we started filming with them the morning. We had met them already. We had met the mother, Mikma, already, and we had seen the kids, and they had seen us. We hadn't met the father of the family before, but literally the morning that they were leaving for their migration, they agreed and let us come and just, you know, stick to them like flies for 7 days from there. And it was, in the beginning, we had a little bit of an issue with the youngest kind of gaming it up for the camera. And we thought, oh no, maybe this isn't gonna work. But after a day, he just kind of stopped paying us much attention. We became boring to him for whatever reason. And yeah, and what you see in the film is the result,
So, excuse me, Eric, we're gonna bring you in. So your role in this is to sort of shape the story, which is an observational story. How do you do that?
Well, this one was a little different in the sense that they'd been working with the footage for a while, and I think they'd taken a couple of stabs at shaping a story and were just looking for fresh eyes to because they had multiple stories and multiple characters, and I think it started out with maybe five, and they were thinking, is it not quite found yet because there are too many characters, or how much time do we spend with each person? What are the stories saying about each other, and how are they talking to each other? And so they showed me quite a bit of material, and we just had some very, you know, um, honest conversations about what the possibilities were in terms of what I thought was working and what their hopes were in terms of which characters and which scenes they were really in love with and wanted to keep, and which ones they weren't, maybe weren't as in love with. And so we narrowed it down to three stories that seemed to speak to each other really well and represent different pursuits and different aspects of this grand dilemma and paradigm shift. And so they, you know, they were very open about like, we'll just kind of take a crack at it. And so I just tried rearranging it in some different ways, and we just had a back and forth, and it was a real pleasure because the footage is so good. It's so good and it's so visual. You know, most films you're really editing around the talking, you know, what is said. And this one, it's such visual storytelling that it was really about what what is happening on the screen in a symbolic way, you know, which was just such a treat to work on.
Had you seen Honeyland before you edited this film?
No, no,
Have you seen it yet?
I haven't. No, I haven't seen it.
Have you, Lucas?
Yeah, it came out way after we finished editing. I mean, not way after. We spent a lot of time in the edit room, and then we spent a lot of time finishing. Once it was post-production took quite a long time in this movie. But I have, yeah, and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's amazing.
The reason I bring it up is because, you know, it seems like, you know, this is probably not an unusual story about so-called progress in parts of the world where people are used to sort of living how they've lived for a really long time. And people's relationship to their land has existed under one paradigm, and now it's changing. And I think the whole way, and you can talk about this a lot more than I can, but just sort of navigating the road and what the road represents in this story, and their relationship to the road, but also to the people who are building the road and who control access to the road in terms of protecting their own land. I mean, it's a story of many places, not just Eastern Nepal.
Yeah.
So how did you know did you know what the story was going to be when you started following the families?
All that I knew when we started was that the region, so in the 90s, I had done a little bit of anthropological research there. I was a budding undergrad social anthropologist for a little while, just as a student really. But so I knew that what I had seen in the 90s was disappearing in many ways because in the lower hills, the roads had already pretty much taken over. There was a town that I loved that used to have a pretty relatively bustling brass industry. They would make brass. They would make brass plates and bowls and little brass Hindu statues and Buddhist statues and things, and but mostly, you know, tableware and kitchenware and household pots and stuff, and that's gone because the roads came in and that industry was no longer valuable to the village. And now you go to that, I went to that, it was more of a town. It was like a hill town, kind of medieval feeling, all stone streets, you know, and then the roads came in and it just felt like a different place. And I thought, okay, if this is happening, this is, you know, we're not going back. I'd really love to document, because the little bits and pieces of what used to be there, what I loved about it, were still there and will continue to be there, arguably. It's not like life is over. I mean, you know, we came in with our own biases to see what happens, but, you know, we really wanted to give agency to, and this is what we expressed to Eric when he was editing, was like, we really want to make this film the protagonist film. We want to feel them as the characters. And Eric would come back to us and say, but I love feeling the camera. And so what we were so impressed with was his, the filmmaker presence. And what we were impressed with how Eric could balance those two things so delicately, because it really is a complicated, you know, it is a complicated story. Is the road good? Is the road bad? We get that question a lot. And we, you know, we have our own feelings, but we didn't want to make a didactic film that said, you know, from our perspective, this is capitalism run amok in Nepal. You could hear Nepalis say that, and that's fine, but we didn't want to be the ones expressing our moral value on what was happening. So, yeah.
Is this road, is it a government, based on a government plan? Is there a plan for industrial?
There is. So the big picture wise, geopolitically, you have China in the north, who has this this very publicized and well-documented plan that is usually translated in English to the Belt and Road Initiative. And the belt part of it refers to a belt around China. And the road part is roads going into that belt, right? So they want to bring industry and transport to all their border. And that means the Himalaya, that means Mongolia, that means up in Russia, and that means all through Southeast Asia. And then they want to have roads going into that belt. And it's a big plan. They're buying at ports, they're financing ports, and then countries can't pay back the finances, and then they buy the port and they own a port. I don't want to misspeak, but they do. This practice has happened and it's known. And so China's interested in this road coming through, and India is also interested because it increases their ability to trade with China directly. And this road in particular would become the shortest route over the Himalaya between the Bay of Bengal, between like Calcutta. So that's the big geopolitical picture. And then in the village, you know, everybody wants a road because their life is hard and they're suffering. They have to carry everything. It's all manual labor to get, the fields are terraced. It's a lot of work. It's generations of work that have built their farms, and they're beautiful because everything is handmade and hand set. You know, the stones, their houses are made of stone. There's no concrete. It's just stone. It really is. And it's kind of amazing skills that they don't realize these are skills. They just think they're hardships. So when you have these clashes, the road is the conduit for this clash, basically. And, you know, it's not over. The story is not over. It's just begun. It really has. So we wanted to get in there and capture this moment before, you know, before whatever is going to eventually become what becomes, if that makes any sense. It was a big motivation for us doing it, was to encapsulate what was happening before the concrete is set and, you know, it's done, basically. It's a bad analogy, but that's kind of.
There's one scene, and I don't exactly know where in the film it is, but it's nighttime and they're walking over this bridge. It's dark out. And I was like, oh my God, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course.
How do they do this? Why do they walk at night in the total dark?
Yeah, part of that, it wasn't as dark as the camera made it look a little darker than it was, but it was pretty much night. That was me filming that scene, and I was shining my flashlight. And that was the light they were using. It was dangerous. And luckily we caught it on film because we wanted to show that, you know, that this was not, you know, it's not a sure thing, that you make it safely to the other end of the road when you're carrying all your stuff, because accidents do happen up there. You hear about them. They're not common, but, you know, they do happen. We heard stories of during certain passes where boulders would just start falling down, and some people got, at least we heard one account of a person that actually got killed just by walking down the path because a boulder came and knocked them out. because it's steep. There's certain sections that are incredibly steep.
How long were you with them all told?
Well, we were in the country for 9 months because we were funded on a Fulbright student grant, which is a great way for those budding filmmakers out there. If you're interested in doing international projects and you have a degree, look up Fulbright, and they support arts as well as more academic and literary pursuits. And so that was lucky. And then we probably filmed a quarter to a third of that time. So we took 3 trips up and down the road filming, and then some shorter ones as well, but 3 trips along the entire length of it.
So just you got on for a second, like, what about electricity and batteries and?
Oh yeah, the practical stuff. Yeah, we had solar panels for. I mean, we carried lightweight gear, lightweight batteries. We didn't have anything big and heavy. It was all small pocket cameras, and I mean pocket. They were the DSL, the mirrorless camera. It was a mirrorless camera, and so yeah, battery charging was always an issue. We had a little brick battery that would charge some of our stuff, and then we would charge solar throughout the day. But then when we were when we were shooting with the Kavala story, it was a lot. We were always on during the day, and then at night we would power down and let them have some space, and we would recharge and download footage. And we were there. It was tight. We had battery issues. We had equipment always dying on us. We found that some schools in the villages were more well outfitted, and they were willing to help us, and they would let us charge. They would have solar backup batteries. It's pretty common in Nepal because there used to be a lot of brownouts, and there still are in the village, but not in Kathmandu so much. But a lot of houses have their own battery units with solar panels on the top, and they'll be trickle charging the batteries all day long. And then when the power cuts out, they have power to light their lights. They don't use as much electricity as we do in the West. They don't have heavy refrigeration or air conditioning or anything. But yeah, so that's a good strategy for them to keep power going. And we used it to recharge our batteries. And when we were on the border with China, there's they call it Little Tibet. There's like a little section that's just across the border, but you don't have to go across the bridge. Just the way the geography is, you can just walk there without crossing the river to get into China / it's Tibet. And so our assistant, we had always somebody with us from the village that was helping us either carry or organize or go ahead and get logistics taken care of, and like food and stuff like that. Make sure they ordered food for us that was ready by the time we got there, so we wouldn't have to so we could be as efficient with our time as possible when we were shooting. And he went and he traded time building a pigsty, helping fix a fence on a pigsty in order to use, because right across the border was China's all electrified. It's all ready to go. They have a grid. They have electricity, but in Nepal they don't. So he would go across, and then he was fixing the pigsty, and the person that owned the house would let him charge our batteries overnight there. So there was little things like that happened. We just had to it was, when I look back at it, we think, okay, you want to come back? When I look back at it, I'm like, how did, it seems like an impossible task. Like, I don't know if I could subject myself to that again, because it's brutal. I mean, it's difficult keeping up with people on a steep, country path. So, but we made it happen. I mean, things kind of work out when you need them to, I guess, is the, we planned as much as possible, but we definitely had worrisome times with the end of the shoots. Like, our batteries were just dying. We put it in the camera, and like 30 minutes later, die. And we was like, another one. And we made it. It worked out. We missed some stuff, I'm sure, but we got what we needed. I think it's we're happy with how it turned out.
Eric, I'm not sure exactly what point you came into the project, but when you started looking at the footage, was there anything that you noticed, given the conditions under which it had been filmed, that was sort of unusual or different from the other films that you've worked on?
Yeah, I think that they have a really patient eye for texture, and so in the locations there was always plenty of footage to look at, as opposed to a lot of films. People train the camera on their main character, and that's really all you've got to work with is a 45-minute shot of them on the phone or something, because people expect that the drama is going to come out of the conversation, and they were really filming the place. The place is a character, and um, so I don't know. I thought about it more from a Terrence Malick perspective, where it was going to be this sort of collage of beautiful images, and yeah, like I said, I was very impressed. All the shots are lovely, and I love that part of the world, and I love outdoor. I mean, it anyway. It could have been a 4-hour film too. I felt like.
So you guys are both cinematographers, right?
Yeah, I mean, my background is photography originally, so not cinematography.
Yeah.
Transfers.
Yeah, I work in the film industry and camera department, so yeah, I'm close to cameras pretty often. And I should just mention, we did, from the editing perspective, we worked with an editor for about 6 months who shaped some of the who shaped some of the scenes for us and really brought it into like a containable form, and that leapfrogged us into IFP labs, and we learned a lot from there. And then from there, so we already had this footage that we had worked with for a couple of years, for 3 years maybe, before, like ourselves, and then with another editor who was a story consultant on the film, Sue Peel. And then, so by the time Eric got the footage, we had already we had exhausted a lot of thoughts and like, how does this work? What's going on? What do we, what are we missing? And I feel like when we talked to Eric originally, we heard from him that he was like, I get it. I get what you're trying to do. I can see what you do. It's not the form that it's in right now. I think we showed you originally a 2-hour, 3-hour cut. I can't remember, Eric, but before we gave him the footage, we showed him an assemblage of the film that we had. And it was, like he said, sprawling with 5 stories and maybe not like it was like a stone in rough form. Like if you're making a sculpting analogy, it was like kind of like a piece of it was there and a piece of it was there, but nothing was really, the emotional resonance was what we were trying to bring out of it. And I think that's what we heard from, the passion we heard from Eric was like, oh, that's how we knew this is, and then it was just like, when can we do it? And then Eric was an amazing asset because it took us forever. There's so many technical difficulties for us to transfer the project over, and he was so patient waiting. He's like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We'll figure it out. And I don't know if you remember that torturous 2 months where we were just like, why won't the program open? But yeah, so there's all sorts of kind of technical hurdles that we had to go through, and then story-wise, we really felt important, for us after 3 years. We need to find the right person to, and it was difficult. Finding editors was a big challenge for us.
Sorry, what were you
a lot of editors. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know. I want to compliment Eric for the agility and I don't know what the word is. It's like
well, he was a good fit for the film.
Yeah. I mean, he brought his experience to the game. I mean, Eric had already, we saw one of the films he did with Reporter early on. It's really, you guys should all see his first film that he shot in Africa, so. Yeah.
I think the fact that you've been to that part of the world, I think you did get it on a level that a lot of people, they wouldn't have been familiar with the place enough to kind of understand what we were trying to do. I think that helped.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I can't take much credit. The footage is just so good, but I think what's really special about this film is that it's not trying to hammer the point, like a Western perspective on, I see what's going on in this part of the world, and I'm going to tell people in the West sort of the socio-political economic story. It's such a simple story about a sea change in the course of civilization, which I just think there aren't going to be that many more of those films in the next 20 years because, you know, I think in the last 100 years there could have been lots of those films in different parts of the world where a culture disappears because technology or electricity or whatever it is comes in. And I think you know, a sort of Ken Burns approach to that would be very intellectual and lots of talking heads. And I loved that their approach was really simple because it's really hard to make a simple film. Actually, it's so much easier to just let everyone say everything about all kinds of things. And I love that it's a film like I can't wait till my kids are old enough to show them because it's so elemental. It really talks about humans in progress in such a simple way, like certain Buddhist films do, like spring, summer, winter, fall, spring, or whatever that film is, where you're really down into like the bone marrow of like time and change. And they really wanted it to be quiet and be paced really steadily, and that's really my cup of tea. So it was a good fit.
What does the title mean?
Baato, it's a Nepali word. It means path originally, and now it's being used for roads as well. So it just means Baato. It's like kun Baato Majane means what road are you going on? What path are you taking?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Just gonna say for the people in the audience, just to remind you that if you have a question, please type it in the Q&A or the chat. We have about 5 or 10 minutes left. So now is the time, don't be shy. So have you gotten a chance to show this film to anyone in Nepal, and how would you have done that?
We're saving Nepal. We are showing it to people in Nepal. We have an executive producer who's Nepali. He's actually in Switzerland right now, I believe. He's a filmmaker, a really esteemed filmmaker, Kasang Satan, and he's seen it, and a few other of our Nepali friends have seen it. Not that many. We've been a little protective of it because we want to bring it to Nepal in a way that's culturally sensitive and appropriate for the people in the film, and to do it in a way that we hope that will, you know, have it be of the most use there. So we're still kind of talking with a couple partner organizations that will help us roll it out there, and we're looking at getting Nepali subtitles for the parts in the film that aren't in Nepali, because there's, you know, I don't know, hundreds, dozens, if not hundreds, more than 100 languages that are spoken in Nepal, and so, you know, there's a language, the Tibetan dialects that are spoken by the villagers aren't necessarily understood by the rest of the country. So we want to subtitle it in Nepal for a Nepali audience. We originally thought we would try to, you know, be there for its rollout, but now with the way things are going, we don't know what the timing will look like with all that, you know. So we're hoping in the winter to at least have some screenings in Kathmandu to begin with, and then hopefully figure out some way to bring it into the villages. Because Chamtang, the village where the family starts out, is now partially electrified. They're actually putting in a micro hydropower plant across the valley, and they'll be running transmission lines across these steep valleys from one side to the other, which is pretty incredible engineering feat when it happens. The road is there. There's an army base there now. They're kind of run the road right up into a cliff, so they're kind of stuck right now. And I think they'll probably start dynamiting when construction starts again, and because it gets really rocky and steep from the village north. And there's internet there now, which wasn't there before, limited. So there's already a lot of these changes have already happened. I mean, and we're in close contact with our good friend Karma Bhotia, who's from the village, who lives in Colorado, who runs a foundation. I mean, if you go to our website, you can find a link to his foundation, and he goes back regularly and is involved with a lot of, he built a school, he rebuilt the school in the village, and he's bringing in some stoves. He's hoping to bring in some stoves that have stovepipes, because a lot of these families have open fire cooking inside their houses, so they can get really smoky. So he's bringing in all these stoves with smoke pipes for them, or hoping to. It's not done yet, but that's one of the projects he's working on.
Do you
And he's seen it, and he's told us that he's ecstatic that we filmed when we did, and he said, you really captured something that's not happening the same way anymore. They're not walking like this as much as they used to. The bridges are still out, but they can run tractors up. So you can just pay somebody, put all your heavy loads on the tractor, walk down, and then meet your goods, you know, when they come down on the tractor. You probably walk down quicker than the tractor will make it, because the road's not that good, but it's good enough.
You think when people in Nepal see this, this will spark a dialogue or a conversation that will in and of itself be not controversial, but, you know, people will take sides naturally.
Yeah, we hope so. I don't know. I'm interested to see how people react to it, how they connect with it. Because, you know, we connect to it from a very different perspective, than they'll be watching it with totally different eyes than film festival audiences see it. So I don't know exactly what to expect. I imagine we'll get some people that are appreciative. Some people might not, you know, understand the story we were trying to say and the way that we told it. I'm not sure, you know, like, I'm excited to see it. I think the people in the villages, the people in the film will really enjoy it. I can see that, but, you know, I don't know.
The hope is that it creates dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, dialogue is the goal, really. We want just people to talk, because our impression was when we were walking and talking and asking people, like, so what do you think about the road? You know, tell us what you think, what's happening. And most people, you know, we were searching, let's find the perfect story where there's somebody who's against the road, that's protesting in some way, and organizing, or doing something, you know, that was against the development, that was saying, like, slow down or anything. We couldn't find anybody. Everybody, like I said,
Well, the story of the meeting.
Yeah, right. We showed that in the meeting where the road takes out your land, and you're like, oh, I can't plant potatoes there anymore, and that makes you angry. That's what we got. But that's just a moment. There was nobody. I mean, yeah.
It wasn't as controversial as we thought it would be.
Yeah, it wasn't.
People seemed pretty excited about it coming.
Yeah.
I think, you know. So who knows how.
Yeah. Everybody wants better access to schools and education and healthcare, and, you know, they want a little bit, they want their muscles to feel a little less sore, you know, for their future generations.
So we see this kind of progress as negative, or as pushing people off their land, or changing a way of life. What I hear you saying is, right, but the people who live there actually want this change.
Yeah. They do. And they don't realize that they need to, I mean, from our perspective, like, the solution is to collectivize, to organize and protect the resources that you have available to you, and to exert some sort of control. But it's really, I mean, the story is rather complicated, because their village is in a national park buffer zone. So a lot of the species, the plant species that grow in that area, are already protected in some form or another. And it's a completely unique ecosystem. And so the plants that grow at certain altitudes in the Himalaya don't grow anywhere else. You know, you go down, you know, you walk 15 minutes and you can go from one ecozone to another in a really short span of time.
So are there medicinal, is the medicinal stuff that they make, is that based on those plants being located where they are? Yeah,
exactly. And they're sought after, right? They're the big. There's a big market in China for medicinal plants, and so you can only imagine, you know, the business clickings that were happening. There were already people along the border from China coming in to buy little, you know, Himalayan wood, for example. They would go and procure like specialty jungle woods, hardwoods, and they would, you know, go out for sculptures or whatever for very specialized uses, and they would pay top dollar. You know, they were driving the market. So,
well, and where the road,
I mean,
where the road does go currently, or when we were there rather, there was a lot of lumber. I mean,
yeah,
forestry happening. So we
all
would
of a sudden, just like overnight,
piles of trees on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Because suddenly there's a road that you can take that resource out. You know, that wasn't an option before. And it's just like, if there's not planning, if they don't slow down and like think about what's happening, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you know, I believe that there's a way to do it responsibly. There's a solution that works, that works for the betterment of the people that live there. And I don't think that that's necessarily something that is being talked about or on a wide level. It may be talked about amongst the power players in the village, but you know, as far as the participation of the whole village and to way to, in some equitable, you know, our goal wasn't to give you the solutions. I mean, that's the kind of whole point of the film. But these kind of things, like, yes, we definitely want people to talk about, and we plan to do educational screenings. And for those, we hope to bring in panels of, you know, people that are more familiar and more studied and more authoritative on the issues that are happening in South Asia and the Himalaya, and just in road development in general around the world, because a lot's going on in Africa and South America right now too with road development. So I
feel like we could have a very much longer and more involved conversation about the issues that are raised in the film. But getting back to the film, and unfortunately we do have to wrap right now, but I mean, it is something that I think everybody should see, because for most of us, at least in the West, it's a world that we're not really let into very often. Get to very often. And so thank you for making it, and thank you for spending the time to shape this story and bring it to us. For the people in the audience, I hope if you haven't seen it, you have until Monday at midnight to see it here at the virtual Woods Hole Film Festival. And please remember to vote. So I'm gonna say thank you, you guys, and you have done an amazing job. It's a very beautiful film. So
Thanks for showing it. Thanks, Judy.
Great. Thank you, and have a great night, everyone.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.